first part about really loving something like the ocean is the respect. Respect for the ocean. The ocean, as beautiful as it is, she who gives can taketh away really quickly. And it just reminds you that, yeah, we are stewards and we have to be stewards of the ocean and not take it for granted. I grew up in Fairhaven, right here on the Navesink River. I've lived in this town for the majority of my life, 47 years. I'm the fourth generation. To be a kid growing up in the water, it's an endless playground. It goes on forever. It's my comfort zone. I'm more comfortable out on that boat, 100 miles offshore than I am in a city. Just that feeling of calm, to be out there and be away from cell phones and computers and the day-to-day stuff and just be one with the ocean. I have 2 children, Jack and Cameron. They're both water kids. So they're the 5th generation in town. My son caught his first bluefin tuna. He was 5 years old, 68 miles offshore. It's been one of my main priorities to continue what we have and make it better and make the waters and the environment a better place. And I intend to leave it better, for them.
Despite the fact that we call this planet Earth, it's really an ocean planet. Salt water covers 70% of it. The ocean is really the foundation of how our planet works. It produces the oxygen, it moderates the climate, it produces food that feeds the world's people. And it's central to our lives. It's the place we come to play, whether we're on the beach or surfing or fishing or scuba diving.
The ocean, it looks like it's a really calm place, but it's really not. There's a lot of activities that go on in the ocean, both that you can see and some that you cannot see. Fishing is obvious, seeing a Navy vessel go by is obvious, but there's submarine cables, there's life under the ocean, whales, dolphins, and seabirds up above the ocean. So there's a lot of activity that goes on.
So one tool that we think will help us strike a balance between all these demands that we want to place on the ocean is ocean planning. And planning is really about anticipating what might happen in the future and then making sure that we're setting up the rules of the game that will protect the things that need to be protected and allow uses to happen in the places that are most appropriate.
One of the things that ocean planning does is it helps bring people to the table, both decision makers and stakeholders, and literally gets people in the same room to talk about some of these things. And that's something that you would think has been happening all along, but it hasn't, and at least not to this extent. We've known for a long time that there are, kind of these special places in the ocean. Whether you're a scientist or a fisherman that makes their life on the ocean, you just know that there's places that there's a lot of life. And one of the great things that's coming out of this process is they're pulling together some of the best available data and saying that these places in the ocean are special and need to be protected.
Based on orbiting satellites and upcoming missions, we get maps of the ocean every day, all the time, for different parameters. And so we actually have the tools necessary to make ocean planning decisions that seem informed by the actual ocean itself.
Managing the ecosystem versus managing pieces of it is a challenge. I found this in my own efforts with focusing on tuna. What does decision-making do to ensure that fishermen are still able to go out and catch fish and bring a fish home to eat? That's part of the sport. But I think ocean planning, getting folks together is going to be important.
Fishermen, they know this intuitively. They are very tuned in because in some ways they're probably some of the better naturalists that we have. Getting the people to actually spend time out there in on the conversation, I think, is priority number one.
Oh yeah! All right, we're going to need the net, gentlemen. Ready, Hawks?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Oh, there's bass, baby. Hawks, come on, Hockeys. Oh my God.
You gotta be kidding me.
I have loved fishing since the earliest days. My dad took me out when I was 6 years old, camping. and he threw a red and white daredevil into a bunch of old logs in a lake in Pennsylvania. He reeled that lure in, and this huge largemouth bass came up and whoosh, destroyed that lure. And from that day on, I was hooked.
Giant bass!
It's an adventure, but it's also a significant challenge. When you get a game fish on the line and you see your friends or your buddies or your family just exhilarated, that's a great, amazing experience. And for me, that's a lot of it.
I grew up in Florida, right near the coast, and so growing up around that environment really influenced sort of my ideas about what sustainability might be and what the ocean and coast should look like. I go back home now to the beaches and coasts that I grew up on, and I can't even find some of the places we used to go to due to all the development that's happened. It's really important to think long-term ahead about what we want the ocean to look like and what our vision for that is to balance the uses and the environment together.
The ocean doesn't recognize the political boundaries that society has created. The ocean doesn't know where one state stops and one state starts. So we want to manage the ocean in a way that reflects the natural ecology and the natural systems. And that means thinking regionally.
The task of ocean planners can be a difficult one. It's a new concept. You're trying to get people who think really differently about the ocean down to the same table, and even getting to the point where you're talking the same language.
One of the advantages of an individual stakeholder coming to the table early in the process is to make sure that their information is available to the agencies before decisions are made about potential developments offshore. And if you're a recreational fisherman and people are interested in putting in wind facilities offshore, making sure those are placed in an area where you can still do your fishing activity is important to make sure that we plan for those in advance rather than waiting until it's too late and that space is potentially too crowded to accommodate emerging uses that we haven't even thought of yet.
It's a busy place where we live. The entrance to New York Harbor, which is Sandy Hook Bay, there's a definite need for planning in the oceans to coordinate all these things, not do more work, spend more money, and endanger the environment to the degree that we've been doing it.
The ocean faces an enormous and growing number of threats. In the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, there's a tremendous demand to put sand on the beaches to protect waterfront homes. And unfortunately, the Army Corps of Engineers has now started to go into places to take that sand where they've never gone before. Sand absolutely moves all the time. And when it moves into the channels, we have to dredge it out and put it somewhere else.
So these two barges now are taking that sand, loading it up on other barges, and dumping the sand. The same sand that we already paid to have dumped on the beach to replenish it. So for me, somebody's not talking to somebody else.
This good?
Yep. I think it's very important that my children learn to be good stewards of the sea. I teach them how to fish, not only how to fish, but how to make sure that the environment around you is taken care of, pick up garbage, pick up floating debris, and to continue to improve the quality of the oceans for future generations to come.
I think the thing that pulls me out of the pure academic research setting into things like ocean planning is my concern for people who are not here yet. I strongly believe that they have rights that ought to change our behaviors today. Some people don't feel that at all, and that's okay, but this is the motivator that I have.
People sometimes assume that somebody's taking care of this, that you just kind of assume like, oh, well, somebody's thinking about this and they're already doing these type of things. And that's not always the case. I think the public has a voice in this process and more than they realize. There are people to talk to that will listen and hear your concerns.
People think that there's a lot of people behind me and with me doing my job, balancing uses and protecting the environment. But there's really only a handful of us, and we need the public to get involved.
I've always had a passion for the ocean. I don't try to explain it, I just sort of accept it. It's what moves me, it's what satisfies my soul. I'm a scuba diver, I'm a fisherman, I'm a sailor, and that's when I'm happiest, is when I'm out there. It is something that I'm very, very concerned is at risk.
The ocean planning process, although it's kind of obscure and in some ways government heavy, it's important for all of us and how things move forward, not just in the next year or the next 5 years, but decades into the future.